death toll from a garbage landslide in Ethiopia continues to rise. The United Nations pleads for aid to avert famine in Somalia. And if you're in Washington, D.C., watch your step. Food delivery robots have taken to the streets. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. And I will have those stories but first we'll begin with breaking news here. Kenyan doctors have ended their 100-day walkout on public hospitals after union leaders and government officials struck a deal in Nairobi Tuesday on pay and working conditions. The agreement ends a stalemate that threatens to embarrass the government before the August presidential election. Some 5,000 members of the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, which represents workers in state hospitals, walked out on December 5th. Private health facilities were quickly flooded with patients, but many Kenyans were unable to afford the fees and could not get treatment. The protracted industrial likely cost many lives. Now, the death toll from the landslide at a massive garbage dump in Ethiopia's capital has climbed to more than 60 people on Tuesday. And meanwhile, bereaved relatives wrestled with a handful of emergency workers, angrily accusing them of delays and saying dozens of people are still missing after Saturday's disaster at the Repi dump in Addis Ababa. A city spokesman says 49 dwellings were destroyed in the landslide. Rescue workers used bulldozers to move piles of trash to search for survivors, while volunteers dug through the trash with their hands. Hospital workers say at least 50 people have received treatment. The government has not given a cause for the landfill collapse, but squatters blamed it on a biogas plant being constructed nearby. Ethiopia's communications minister is blaming the squatters for digging into the trash pile and destabilizing it. Now, the mayor of Addis Ababa has vowed to relocate those living at the landfill. While modern electronics use a number of rare earth minerals in their batteries and circuitry, the Democratic Republic of Congo is where much of these minerals are mined, often dug by hand by people endangering their health and safety for low wages. In the face of criticism, the high-tech industry has launched an initiative to improve the conditions under which such minerals are mined. VOA senior analyst Jeffrey Young has details.
They're considered essential these days. Mobile phones, tablets, computers. And with technology always advancing, manufacturers demand raw materials in a never-ending stream. These electronics, especially their batteries, depend on rare earth minerals such as tantalum and cobalt. A significant amount of these minerals come from the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, especially in the southern region that used to be called Katanga, where the major city is Lubumbashi. Those who toil in these so-called artisanal mines, hand-digging, washing, sorting, and hauling what they find, end the day with the equivalent of only a few dollars. And some of those working in the mines are young children. The number of school children toiling in the mines is large, according to Amnesty International researcher Mark Drummond.
United Nations, which is based in the DRC, says that there are at least 40,000 children working in these artisanal mines in the southern part of the country. How many are working on cobalt as opposed to other minerals, we don't know, but it's clearly a very large problem.
Drummond says poverty compels families to send their children to work in mines and not to school. He adds that the problem is made worse because of school fees in the DRC that some parents cannot afford. The DRC has laws and follows treaties banning the use of child labor, but enforcement is weak, according to a representative of African Resources Watch in Lubumbashi, speaking to VOA via Skype, Richard Ilunga Mokena.
Unfortunately, this legislation are not applied here in Congo. That's the main problem we have here. It's to apply legislations about protecting children who's working in mining sites.
In hand-dug artisanal mine pits, workers go sideways into the earth as well as straight down. And sometimes collapses take place, burying miners alive. And that's not the only deadly hazard they face, says Amnesty's Mark Drummond.
And the miners also don't have protective equipment. For example, inhaling cobalt dust can be extremely dangerous. It can cause a fatal lung disease called hard metal lung disease.
In the face of mounting criticism, a Chinese business group, along with Apple, HP, Samsung, and Sony, launched last December the Responsible Cobalt Initiative. The goal is to get manufacturers to obtain their cobalt from reputable sources, not from dangerous mines. And last November, the Electronic Industry Citizenship Council launched its own initiative to stop trading rare minerals with militias that use mining for revenues. Compliance will take time. Meanwhile, from dawn to sunset in southern DRC, shovels continue to turn in the deep earth. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.
Well, Poland says it is seeking the arrest and extradition of a Minnesota man identified by the Associated Press as a former Nazi commander responsible for massacring 44 civilians in World War II. Two AP stories say 98-year-old Michael Karkos, who lives in Minneapolis, was a commander of the Nazi SS-led Ukrainian Self-Defense Legion. The Associated Press alleges Karkos ordered soldiers to attack a Polish village to retaliate for the killing of another SS officer. Polish authorities say they are 100% certain that Karkos is their man. Now, the Associated Press says Karkos lied to U.S. immigration authorities after the war before settling in Minnesota. Karkos' family calls the allegations scandalous and baseless slanders and says he actually belonged to an underground unit that fought the Nazis. But the AP says the evidence against Karkos comes from fellow soldiers and wartime documents, including Karkos' own Ukrainian language memoirs. Karkos suffers from Alzheimer's disease. Now, German prosecutors dropped their case against him in 2015 after American doctors determined he's too sick to stand trial. A revised travel ban issued by U.S. President Donald Trump has led to fewer protests, but still has generated plenty of criticism. The controversy over these measures has spurred some people to reach out to others of a different faith. VOA's Nadim Yaqub has the story of a Muslim and a Jewish family in Chicago's suburbs who are working together to try to build a better place for themselves and their children.
On a recent morning, Rabbi Jordan Bandit Appel visited his new Muslim friend Fatih Yildirim at his home in Schaumburg, a Chicago suburb.
Yeah. It's not us, but
They first met in January at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, where they had been taking part in a protest against President Trump's travel ban. Fatih was carrying his 7-year-old daughter, Mariam, while Rabbi Jordan had his yarmulke-wearing 9-year-old son on his shoulders. A photographer captured the scene.
This is what I stand for, and I'm glad that it came out and it went viral, not because I'm in it, just because the message in it.
They exchanged numbers, and a couple of weeks later, when Rabbi Jordan invited Fatih and his family for a Shabbat meal, it made headlines. Rabbi Jordan says he participated in the protest because he felt he needed to show solidarity with Muslim communities.
I did not go to that protest to protest against President Trump or really against anyone, but really to protest for the people that were adversely impacted by this ban.
So when the Jewish cleric visited his Turkish friend for brunch, the process of getting to know more about each other's culture and religion continued.
Yeah, this is basically black tea. It's so popular in Turkey.
Sipping Turkish tea, eating matzah, the Jewish unleavened bread, and goat cheese, both men felt comfortable in each other's company.
You know, the best thing about meeting Fatih is that I feel like I didn't just meet somebody in the context of interfaith dialogue, which I think is wonderful, but I really feel like I made a friend, and certainly that's been my experience coming here today, feeling welcomed, and the hospitality of his family. I feel very comfortable here.
The story of the growing friendship between the two families gained national attention in the midst of the travel ban controversy, the measures to expel undocumented immigrants, and the recent uptick in anti-Semitic incidents in the US.
We had more fun.
Fatih feels the similarities in their religions can actually help end hatred and bigotry.
Islam, Judaism, and Christianity is all Abrahamic traditions anyway. So there are so much similar stories about all these religions. And if we promote those, we can stop the bigotry, hatred, and discrimination, I think, in the world.
Both fathers feel it is important for them and their children to form bonds and create a more tolerant society in America. Nadeem Yaqub, VOA News, Schaumburg, Illinois.
Well, President Trump's revised executive orders stops the issuance of visas for 90 days for citizens from 6 Muslim-majority nations, removes Iraq from the list, and suspends the nation's refugee program for 120 days. Immigrants in the U.S. are now speaking out about the travel ban, and VOA's Caroline Trisuti has this sample of opinion.
It seems everyone in America has an opinion about the new travel order.
So there are briefs due today and briefs due tomorrow.
As the previous order was under judicial suspension.
The central constitutional problem.
Today's main focus of the news is
this revised executive order.
We've heard a lot from political pundits and experts about it, but we wanted to take you to the real people, American immigrants, to see what they think. Many Washington, D.C. cab drivers are from elsewhere.
My name is Lama Safa. I came from Ethiopia.
My name is Mangus Gabre. I'm from Eritrea.
I'm from Pakistan.
Cabs are the lifeblood of the nation's capital.
Somalia is supposed to be American allies.
Abdi Hassan is from Somalia. The 90-day travel ban affects his country and 5 others: Sudan, Yemen, Libya, Iran, and Syria.
To say someone coming from the airport, oh, you are Muslim, go this side. Oh, you are black, go this side. Or you are from Somalia or Sudan, go this side. It makes the whole country look bad.
Okay, you're saying we're going...
Liaquat Hussein came to the U.S. in 1967. He agrees with the extra security measures to prevent terrorism.
It's not mean all Muslim is bad. And United States didn't ban everybody. They're banning bad people.
Can we go around the corner to the Washington Monument?
The taxi drivers express the most sympathy for the Syrian refugees. The new order bars their arrivals until July. Hebtam Talan came from Ethiopia 15 years ago.
I was a refugee once. America is the one who rescued me.
Nebiat Teki of Eritrea is raising 2 teenagers in the U.S.
You can't have a good security to stop like those people, but like from Syria, people, they are children.
These cabbies are not in charge of U.S. policy, but they share their opinions as they drive many legislators and White House officials along the D.C. streets. As they say, what's there to do in a taxi but talk?
Meter off.
Carolyn Prasuti, VOA News, Washington.
Well, residents of the northeastern United States woke up Tuesday to a late winter storm that brought blizzard conditions affecting some 50 million people. The storm damped snow accumulations of up to 60 centimeters with winds in excess of 100 kilometers per hour. Thousands of flights were cancelled and many schools closed. German Chancellor Angela Merkel's planned meeting with President Donald Trump in Washington was pushed back to Friday. The mayor of New York City emphasized safety during the storm.
And most importantly, New Yorkers should stay off the roads. This is a very important point for your own safety, given the frigid temperatures, the huge amount of snow in a short period of time, the wind, which I'll talk about in a moment. Stay off the streets for your own good, for your own safety, but also to help the sanitation department to keep the streets clear.
Well, here in Washington, D.C., the storm is bringing up to 5 centimeters of snow, sleet, slush, and below freezing temperatures. Well, Well, it's time now. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. And also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Coming up, the UN demands action in Somalia as famine looms. Stay with us, please.
I'm Milar Sega. I'm the host of VOA's The Correspondents, a roundup of the world's top stories with analysis from our dedicated reporters. It's really a conversation the same way that you would bring a friend to your home and ask them what's going on. And our correspondents will do that and answer those questions through their own eyes.
That appears a false choice in more ways than one.
We can't actually put you there, but we can come pretty close. In 30 minutes, we'll show you the world.
Welcome back. Now, as hunger and drought continues to devastate populations in Somalia, the United Nations is urging the international community to do more to prevent further suffering in the country. Here's Africa 54's health correspondent, Lina Mudu.
At least 45 children have died from hunger-related ailments here at the Banadi Hospital in the Somali capital, Mogadishu, over the last 2 months. More than 1,200 children have been treated for severe malnutrition. Water sources have dried up due to the prolonged drought in Somalia, forcing thousands to drink contaminated water as living conditions continue to deteriorate.
In most cases, the death cause is the dehydration. We are doing the rehydration of the child, and we're given also some antibiotics for that because it's acute watery diarrhea and suspect you have cholera, and then we are given erythromycin in children and doxycycline in adults. This is what we have done so far.
The large number of critically malnourished children being admitted to the 200-bed government-run hospital is overwhelming.
The support is coming late, and this is the drought-affected population already is here.
The United Nations humanitarian chief, Stephen O'Brien, says something can be done in Somalia.
To be clear, we can avert a famine in Somalia. We have a committed, clear, new president, a humanitarian and resilience track record, a detailed plan. We're ready, despite the incredible risks and danger. We have local and international leadership. We have a lot of access. Now we need the international community, at the scale of you, the donor agencies and nations, to invest in Somalia. It's life-saving, but we do need those huge funds now.
Speaking before the UN Security Council last Friday, O'Brien said the situation is dire, as more than 20 million people across 4 countries, Yemen, South Sudan, Somalia and Nigeria, are facing starvation and famine.
All 4 countries have one thing in common: conflict. This means that we, you, have the possibility to prevent and end further misery and suffering. The UN and its partners are ready to scale up, but we need the access and the funds to do more. It is all preventable. It is possible to avert this crisis, to avert these famines, to avert these looming human catastrophes.
Meanwhile, in Mogadishu's district of Hoden, a local non-governmental organization called the Somali Relief and Rehabilitation Development Organization runs a wet feeding center where vulnerable children and the elderly receive free food. As similar efforts are being made in Somalia from various local and international organizations to alleviate the pain and suffering of those who are hungry and sick, people also hope for peace so that they can return home. Lina Mudu, VOA News, Washington.
Well, in many places around the world, too much energy is being wasted. But thanks to new technologies, it is increasingly affordable to harvest and use it. At a recent energy summit held here in Washington, D.C., one of the participating commercial firms exhibited photovoltaic cells that turn waste heat into electricity. VOA's George Putich reports.
Sometime in 2014, according to industry research, the number of active mobile devices surpassed the number of humans on the planet. And WikiLeaks' release of what may be classified CIA documents makes it clear all that tech is potentially hackable.
Okay, Google, turn on the hall lights.
Now, a new generation of devices are finding their way into our homes, not just our hands.
Cinnamon and nutmeg. Okay, Google, what sound does a whale make?
Security experts say it's important to understand that in many cases, they're listening all the time.
We have sensors in our phones, in our televisions, Amazon Echo devices, in our vehicles, and really almost all of these attacks are things that are modifying the software that has access to those sensors so that the information is directed to other locations. Security practitioners have known that this is a problem for a long time.
Newman says hackers are simply using the things that make our tech so convenient against us.
Certain pieces of software and certain pieces of hardware have been criticized because, for example, microphones might be always on. But it is the kind of thing that we're demanding as consumers, and we just need to be more aware that the information that is collected for one purpose can very easily be redirected for others.
The WikiLeaks release is especially damaging, not only because it may have laid bare U.S. surveillance techniques, but because it can serve as a how-to manual for what security experts call bad actors.
We also do need to recognize the precedents we set. So as offensive cyber capabilities are used in ways where they're intended to limit collateral damage, they do give the blueprint of how that attack took place. And bad actors can then learn from that.
So, how can tech-savvy consumers stay safe? Security experts say they can't. If you're online, you're vulnerable. But if you don't want your devices listening to you all the time, simply unplug. Kevin Enochs, VOA News, Washington.
Yeah, most certainly that story was about how vulnerable we are to hacking, especially in all our electronic equipment that we have. Well, it's time now for a short break. And when we come back shortly, a fleet of food delivery robots roll out in U.S. Capitol. We'll be right back.
C'est une parodie de verdict.
We realized a huge gap in using creativity, innovation.
Welcome back. Now, a fleet of food delivery robots roll out in the U.S. Capitol. We'll tell you more about that when we get to that on our script here, because we're talking about what is trending and talking about gadgets that go around the city of Washington delivering food. on the sidewalks. The San Francisco-based local delivery service, Postmates, is believed to be one of the first services in the United States to use a fleet of robots to deliver food orders. Now, the cooler-sized machines are now roaming the sidewalks of the nation's capital, waiting for an order to be placed. Then customers go online or use the company's app to order a meal. The robot then heads to the restaurant using an array of sensors and cameras to navigate the sidewalk. The system creates a digital map to remember travel spots, can even read electronic signs at pedestrian crossings. Well, and in other high-tech news, a Danish-made mobile app is helping churches to go digital and connect with their congregations online. Users say Church Desk appeals to the digitally literate and constantly connected younger generation. Now, the app helps church leaders arrange and promote events. That's including inviting members via emails, text messages, or digital newsletters. Organizers can also use the app to maintain a website and coordinate day-to-day activities with staff and volunteers, including booking of rooms and resources. And finally, the use of tablets, computers, and smartphones means children today are more likely to learn how to type and swipe than actually buckle down to writing by hand. Now, cursive script or manual handwriting is making a comeback in schools across America, with teachers claiming it has benefits which children don't get from a keyboard. A growing number of U.S. states are encouraging teachers to show their pupils how to write longhand. Educators here hope the students will later be able to take notes faster by writing in cursive, and that is what is trending today. Now, in many places around the world, too much energy is being wasted. But thanks to new technologies, it is increasingly affordable to harvest and use it. At a recent energy summit held here in Washington, D.C., one of the participating commercial firms exhibited photovoltaic cells that turn waste heat into electricity. VIA's George Putich reports.
Heat is a byproduct of many industrial processes: glass and metal production, cement factories, biomass facilities, and much of it is released into the air. Converting that heat into electricity usually involves making steam, which drives turbines, which in turn drive electric power generators. But modern technology can convert heat directly into electricity.
When you see something glowing red, that's photons that are being emitted. And if you take a photovoltaic cell, you can actually take those photons and make electricity.
The efficiency of this invention comes from its two important features. First, the gap between the material that absorbs the heat and the photovoltaic cells, which convert its glow into electricity, is less than 1 micron, or 50 times smaller than the width of a human hair, so the photons do not have to travel a great distance. Second, photovoltaic cells are actively cooled down to 30 degrees Celsius, while the photon-generating elements on the other side may be at 900 degrees Celsius. The temperature difference also contributes to the efficiency.
They can actually co-generate an enormous amount of power very cost effectively, somewhere between 2 and 8 cents per kilowatt hour.
Rods with photovoltaic elements can be inserted in holes that usually already exist in furnace exhausts. As most industrial furnaces work for years without interruption, the energy...
And that's it. Thanks. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
This newsword has to do with who is chosen or appointed for high-level jobs, especially government jobs. Cronyism.
Critics say Myanmar, also known as Burma, will continue to be tainted by allegations of